Okay, thank you for the kind introduction. My experience is quite varied. I spent half my career in finance, which is private equity, mergers and acquisitions. That was when I was based in Africa. And then after that, the other half of my career is spent in IT. So from system architecture all the way to IT audit. So today I'll be sharing a little bit about IT auditing and the importance of IT audit. Just a bit about me. Project scope, I've done medium to government level projects, like we do auditing for some government institutions and all this as well. I perform services in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Gabon is in Africa, Rwanda as well, India as well as China. But my Chinese is no good, so usually if I operate in China, I will need an interpreter. So a little bit about IT auditing. So what exactly is IT audit? Correct? IT audit is basically, to perform checks to ensure that the organization's systems, like all their IT infrastructure and everything, is secure, is running properly, is effective, and is efficient. Okay. So the key areas, as I mentioned earlier, is of course security, efficiency, and reliability. These are the three things that all IT auditors look at. So it depends. You have the ISO IT auditors as well, so that is slightly different. So some questions to reflect on your business. So for security, right, one of the first few questions that all IT auditors will ask is the data on your system sensitive? Because if the data is not sensitive, then why secure it, right? Like for example, if you talk about any of your companies, your websites, you will keep the back end of the website secure, but the front end you want it to be accessible to people because you want people to see. But for example, if you store data like your customers' data, your employees' data, or you have, for example, certain sensitive client data. Like for example, in ForBis, we have our accounting data and everything from our clients' firms as well. So that is something that is sensitive. And then for that, you will have to store it in a secure manner. Correct. Then another thing that a lot of people fail to ask, so now they know, okay, I have sensitive data, but which data is sensitive, which is not. So a lot of people fail to ask this question and they fail to catalog. So a lot of our clients that we see nowadays, especially for SMEs, they don't catalog their data properly. So when they look at the data, right, they just say, I have some customer data here, some of my employee data here, and stuff like that. Like for example, one of the recent things that has been traveling around was that one of the branches of UOB actually disposed their customer data in the dustbin without shredding. That is not IT, right? But that is still data security. But for IT, it's even worse. Because once they can access one part, more or less they can see all of it. Then the next one is, of course, is the sensitive data safe? So what measures does your organization take to look after your data? That means, do you put in, for example, your employees' laptops, do they use antivirus, things like that? That is at the most basic level, right? Then, of course, on top of that, if you have cloud services and everything, do you use like all the AI softwares and everything to take care of your security on the cloud, your configurations and all these kind of things? So for data security, if you see, this is a good example. Orange Tea was recently slapped with quite a decent sized fine by basically PDPC because they failed to actually secure their customers' data as well as their employees' data. So 250,000 data points got leaked out. And now PDPC, they were lucky because their fine came before PDPC changed the law. So now basically the maximum cap is a lot higher, it's at $1 million. So the fine can really be substantial if you don't secure your data, correct? Then the next one is of course reliability. So whether or not the data is in good condition. So for a lot of people, they just say, yeah, I just chuck all my data online, I just keep storing. But after that, if you don't take care of the integrity of the data, sometimes it gets overwritten and stuff, you get bad data. From bad data, it may result in you making bad business decisions, things like that. And this has happened with a lot of sales focused kind of firms where, let's say you talk about like spas and things like that, where they have a lot of customers, they have this problem where their data integrity may not be clean. So their customer data, if it's not clean, then they end up, the customer come, they say, hey, I got a package, but then their system shows you don't have a package. Then what happens? So things like that. And the next one is the system up when it needs to be? So for example, if you know your business hours are mostly office hours, your system has to be up during that time. It cannot be down for maintenance, things like that. And sometimes, a lot of companies, they may not necessarily check on this. So their employees may go and update the system or make changes to the system during business hours. And then, of course, it goes down at that point. And of course, the last one is whether the infrastructure is set up correctly for its use. Even though nowadays a lot of people like to talk about cloud, they say, it's a very expandable, you can always increase the size, decrease the size as you like, as you wish. But the issue even with cloud is that you have to buy the right amount of resources. If you have infinite money, of course you can just buy as big a server as you want. But even then, you have to actually manage your costs and everything in a business. So a lot of businesses tend to buy less than what they need. And then what happens is DBS. So the most recent case is, of course, DBS, their IT division. They were requested by MAS, they were given a stop order basically. They cannot produce any new IT applications for the next 6 months. The reason being, their current systems, they never take care of the infrastructure. I have friends working inside, but I cannot reveal too much. But basically, they did not take care of the infrastructure needs, the system went down. And of course, then all of us cannot transfer money, everybody gets stuck for hours and hours on end. And the last one is, of course, efficiency. As I mentioned, with all the money in the world, you can make a system secure and reliable, but does it meet your business needs? So now the benefits of IT audit. So why engage an IT auditor? So like all the points I've given you earlier are pain points. There are a lot of companies, especially for now it's larger companies, but as digitalization flows down, it trickles down to all the SMEs and everything. The more digitalized you get, the more you will require IT audit because for things like minimizing your IT costs. So a lot of companies, they don't actually know what to buy and when to buy and where to buy. So they end up buying the wrong things. They end up wasting money on IT infrastructure they don't need. So we've seen a lot of that, especially in I would say the medium-sized company space. Then also, of course, is to evaluate the company's internal control. Because I think I was having a chat with Donald earlier. So I was saying that, human idiocy knows no limits. So even if you have the best systems in place, all you need is one errant employee to make a very bad mistake, and it can actually cause a lot of problems. And especially when there are no controls or checks and balances in place. Yeah. Then, of course, the next one is to minimize any inaccuracies or inefficiency. So for the inaccuracies and inefficiency, this refers to the reliability of the data. So for a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of businesses, they just keep uploading data, they just keep processing it, but they don't actually check whether or not the data is still viable, is it still useful, and whether or not it's still relevant. Okay? And the last one is, of course, is to assure the companies that their business operation risk is low. Correct? So this is, of course, the so-called your overall benefits for the business, but there are also, of course, regulatory benefits. Like nowadays, a lot of companies have no choice but to get IT audited. So I will share a little bit more on who needs IT audit. So almost all companies rely on IT systems, and it's becoming more common for IT audit, especially for companies that deal with government as well as licensed companies. So, like for example, financial services companies now more or less require IT auditing really, even for those who are not banks. So, like for example, financial payment providers and things like that, they require IT audit. Of course, healthcare as well. So that was because of the MOH leak. So now almost all healthcare providers require IT auditing really. Government and public sector, of course, and telecommunications. But government and public sector is not only specific to, of course, the government, but also their contractors. So a lot of government contractors now, so long as you are dealing with data from the government, you actually require to be audited. So just some examples, like I mentioned earlier, financial institutions, and as I mentioned, one of the important areas is government service providers who access government data. So of course, if you tender for the government, but you are providing them with products and things like that, it's unlikely that they will ask you to be IT audited. But for example, if you deal with any of their critical data or infrastructure, or you're connecting to their systems, they will actually ask you to get IT audited. And now, a growing trend is that for MNCs, quite a number of them, all their so-called second-tier service providers and all, they are actually requiring them to get audited already. And to ensure that when they connect to their systems or when they work with their data and process their data, it doesn't leak out or it doesn't affect the operations of the MNC. The QR code as well as the first website link has my phone number on it, so you can just reach me from there. So thank you so much.